We've got a lot of brokers in the office doing some work, but as always, I am Haley Murr. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships and Development here at Murr Ranch Group, where every other week we're going to be discussing the ranch and sporting property market, buying and selling advice, the latest best stewardship practices, as well as topics currently impacting landowners. Murr Ranch Group, for those of you who are first joining, is a full-service ranch real estate brokerage and consulting company focusing on legacy ranches and sporting and conservation properties around the West. Today, we will be looking back at MRG Top 10 of 2022, the top news and issues facing ranchers, and how many of these challenges will continue to be a part of ranch ownership. And we'll also be looking at some of the successes and stories of our friends and colleagues from last year. Please feel free to ask your questions in the comments, and we will try to answer them during this broadcast. If not, we'll reach out to you after our conversation. Helping me out today is the owner and manager of Murr Ranch Group, Ken Murr. Welcome, Ken.
Hi, manager extraordinaire. Right?
Manager extraordinaire, founder,
Yeah.
manager.
Yeah, we do have a little. Our podcast room is being occupied. We've got 2 new brokers. We're doing all kinds of things. I think we got the new royal family with William and Harry now.
We do the new.
As part of the group. More to come, right?
I haven't used that yet.
So it's a good thing that here we are in the middle of or beginning of January, middle of winter, being as busy or busier than sometimes even the middle of summer. So it's all great.
It's great. This is the time we're prospecting. We're getting new listings. There's a lot of exciting stuff in 2023 that we're excited to share with everyone. But before we get into 2023, we're going to focus on some of the stories and things we discussed in 2022. For those loyal listeners of Land Bulletin, 2022 was our freshman year of having a podcast and live stream. But it was great because we really got into the nitty gritty of some of the biggest issues facing ranchers. And I know I personally learned a lot. And I know, Ken, you might be the sage of a lot of this already, but I know you learned a lot too. So it'll be cool to dive in.
Yeah, things too that you heard about maybe will are occurring. And it's like, okay, so how do we engage in that? How does this information that we're sharing, help our buyers and sellers and just people in general? Overall, I think my vision for everything that we do is just making sure that people understand that when they buy a ranch, own a ranch, that they have certain responsibilities associated with owning that. And stewardship or care and protecting their investment. So that's what we're trying to do with some of this, right?
That's great. We're creating the next stewards. And one of the biggest issues that stewards and ranch owners are facing today, it's been happening for many years in the West, is the availability of water and how precious water is. It's one of the biggest issues facing the West, but ranchers have some of the best tools in order to help this issue. Last year we gathered experts to discuss water history, drought, anti-speculation legislation, the water rights markets, and more, including Tommy Latusek. He came on for a little bit to talk about water. But I guess, even though it was an issue last year, it's not going to stop being an issue in 2023.
Not going away.
Yeah.
The drought, and I think we're moving away from drought to say this is existence, as we know it now. And so, you can't not pick up a paper. I don't care if you're in New York or LA or ever, about water issues.
Right.
And in the West, we're really definitely facing some issues. And so what we're trying to do here in kind of educating owners is of the importance, number one, as an investment tool, right, of buying land with water and how that impacts, your investment. But ultimately, again, getting back to my earlier statement about teaching people to be good stewards, teaching people about the importance of it. How do you manage property with water around you? Are you buying water that is secure? And are there different techniques that, what you grow, the type of plants you grow, the way you irrigate, all these things really do matter. And when you start looking at the depletions in the Colorado River Basin, I'm reading articles right now about even the Great Salt Lake, we need to, we all need to participate
Hmm.
in this uh, in this change, and we all need to support it. We all need to become, a little more, educate and then inspire others of new techniques and things like
Yeah, and it's great. I mean, we've talked about some different, programs that ranchers have participated in. We do have a blog that you guys can all reference after this live stream, to see some of those articles that, we've even written for WLA. But there are programs out there of, ranchers shutting off their water sooner and being, paid by the state. There's a lot of different availability of tools and lessons we can learn. So, it'll continue to be an issue, but there are a lot of smart and intelligent people that are trying to create solutions, and ranchers are definitely one of them.
that.
Um,
Yeah,
and-
and I think we could probably even, hey, we could probably do even a recommendation of books to read,
yeah.
resources. I think in the coming year we'll provide a little bit more of that for folks. Um, and even just understanding Western water law. We did an article a bit about how it originated, and prior appropriation, and those, that type of terminology, which is certainly different than the East Coast. But then even things about the water projects and how we use water in the West is much different than in the East. And books like Cadillac Desert, and they talk
Mhm.
about why we built certain types of water transportation projects and things like that might have been good and might not be good, and how those things that occurred, in the 20s and 50s and 60s are impacting us today. So
Mhm.
I think just understanding that basis is really important. And I find more and more now of owners and buyers, they want to know these things. They want to
Mhm.
know the science. They want to know about the water issues. And I remember even when we owned a property ourselves up on like Upper Colorado, I was just mystified. Like, this water, I mean, we were up by the headwaters. This water
Right.
goes all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. And
Yeah.
to understand all the various users, and I wish I could do it. I always thought if you could like take origami and fold things and see if they flow all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico or something. Little boats, or maybe you got to. Anyways, I always thought that'd be really interesting to see where they
Yeah.
go and how they're used, and if you were a
Yeah, do
molecule,
like a little,
yeah,
like, time hop thing
yeah,
of
right,
them, you know? That'd be cute,
yeah,
like Marcel the Shell or something like
there you go, right,
that.
exactly,
But, water, and this kind of is a good segue, is also, if you have water rights on the property, people are seeing it as an investment, and that kind of leads to another topic that we really harped on, as the markets are changing, as people are trying to pledge against, inflation or hedge against inflation. There's all these different things that um, people are doing to invest, but the market is becoming less and less reliable. So, where should people start to put their money? Ranch investments are a huge opportunity, and we looked a lot at that with Jeff Hubbard on one of our live streams. We looked at, how do we evaluate those type of investments? How we hold your hand. At the end of
mhm.
the day, we're almost like a financial advisor, but we're looking at ranches instead of equities. So just looking at ranches as an investment and what that looks like.
Well, yeah, again, a lot of news out there. We do treat, and investors should understand there's a difference between investing in farmland, in the Midwest versus buying a ranch out west.
Hmm.
There's different income associated with that. There are different crops, it's different water. So there are different criteria, and they should understand the expectations should be different in those investments. Um, Ranching, you're dealing typically with livestock and some level of production.
Hmm.
You know, but a lot of times it's, you're looking more of hay and other things like that, and that use of water then for those type of crops are different, right? And so that relates a lot to what we just talked about water issues. And so,
Hmm.
where should you be utilizing your water to create income opportunities to feed your livestock, and hopefully there's a resource left over then that gets back into the stream, then helps people down the line. as if you think about even the Colorado River and the miles and miles and people that it benefits, for instance. So yeah, that's part of that investment scenario. That is, there's a balance there, and
Hmm.
there's some equity or ethical, I should say, decisions and how you do things.
Hmm.
So water is one component, but it's really understanding the various features, attributes of the land itself. After 30 plus years, and I was dealing early with unique land exchanges and trades. I feel like I'm as qualified as any appraiser in some sense because of I used to have to work on 10-acre mining claims at 13,000 feet to in holdings in national forests to working at things next to national parks, and you just start to understand how what your approach to value. And we've seen, certainly, everybody now wants to be, I think, a ranch broker or a farm broker because they
Hmm.
all think it's a very, and it's a good lifestyle, and certainly it treated us well. But they don't know really a thing about land values and how those have changed. And even somebody getting into the business right now, this past 2 years is not a reflection of the past 30 that I've seen.
Oh
So
yeah.
understanding those attributes of value, how to look at those, so that the investment in the end, because we certainly have clients that will spend 100 million, but we have the $2 million investor too, and we
Hmm.
want to be there for everyone to give them the right understanding of what you should anticipate from that investment, and know huge profits in the ranching business you know, are difficult to obtain from just the pure cattle business. But now there are other things that we'll talk about, even, that you should be aware of. And again, those are things we will continue to educate. We will continue kind of in the course of this year to really harp on those things that are add to that investment.
Hmm. And one of those things, that one can consider
Hmm.
is a conservation easement as a type of income generation. I know we talk about the value of land from the intrinsic value, when it
Hmm.
comes to the sporting attributes, the water, just how much has been taken care of, the stream restoration. There's a lot of things that go into value of property. But one of the things, once you own a ranch, to consider is, a conservation easement. And one of the things we focused on this year were the essentials of easements, because it is a term that makes people a little uneasy at times. Some people don't quite understand what a conservation easement is. So it was interesting this year for our third topic that we went over, was the essentials of easements and what that means, as a ranch owner.
Well, yeah, when I was practicing law, I work on easements and helped draft them back in the early days of conservation, and work with some of the experts, and continue to this day work with those experts, both in from a legal standpoint, top of some of the best, you know,
Yeah.
people that have written and understood and kind of created the model conservation easements, to some of the landscape design folks who are involved in why and how to restrict, where to restrict your property, to some of the people who actually go in and do what we call baseline inventories and study what you're actually protecting, which is really a kind of cool when you can go with some of these really educated guys, and
Hmm.
get to learn, well, how old is that tree, and what is that grass, and it's really compelling, and then getting down to the values of those properties, and as we look at the benefits of conservation easements. Again, you're right. It does play a role in investment decisions, but there's basically five types of financial benefits. You got your federal tax deductions, you got your estate tax deduction impacts, you've got conservation tax credits in Colorado, property tax implications, and then ultimately, in some cases, there's cash, because there might
Hmm.
be funding available from from a nonprofit to a state, to the federal government, in paying for a portion of that conservation
Right.
easement. So those are all really good things, and certainly Colorado with its tax credit program, it's pretty incredible. And the changes that have occurred in the past year, we're really seeing they can now use these credits for up to 20-year period for
Mhm.
deductions, and the tax credits can you can reap, at least in Colorado, up to 90% of the donated value, but you can't take more than 1.5 million in any given year, calendar year, and a total transaction cap of $5 million. But that's substantial, and we've seen certainly, especially even the old time sixth generation rancher. Uh, it really helps them to keep the
It does.
family keeping intact, and the credits have been really beneficial from that standpoint. But we've also seen this year, in the past number of years, problems, especially in the southeast, where there's been abuse of the tax credit system, which was actually just addressed by Congress, and I think we'll talk a bit more about that in some things to come. But there was these conservation easement syndications that were
Mhm.
out there, and it's been a bane, and really they're promoters taking advantage of the situation. They don't think they see them as conservation people, but they're not.
Right.
It's all about maximizing the tax credit and doing it in ways that's not really legitimate. So Congress has actually really done a pretty amazing thing in helping to curb that this year, and that was actually even sponsored and helped supported by the LTA, Land Trust Alliance. So
Good.
there's always good work happening there. So just
Yeah.
know you may hear things out there that saying, "Oh, this is threatened," but it's not the case.
Right. And I mean, that's what we're here for, is to connect you with people we trust and who
Mhm.
are legitimate and will help you with that investment and will help you through that process. Cause they're definitely, I mean, it's just like working with a broker that doesn't necessarily lead you in the right direction. Choosing an accredited land trust is kind of another
Very much.
tool at your disposal. So,
Good terminology there too, hey?
oh,
Accredited land trust.
I've been, reading the dictionary nightly.
Yeah,
That's my
right. No
2023.
more than that, right?
Well, the fourth thing we really focused it on this year, were regional challenges. There's things that we do work around the Rocky Mountain region, but every region is unique and experiences different things. Um, whether that be wildfires, there was some of the flooding in near the Yellowstone area. There was recreational booms in different parts of the country that affects land ownership as well. I mean, there's all these different regional challenges that you have to be aware of, but as a landowner and listening to the live stream and the podcast that we've been putting out, there are ways to mitigate some of this risk that ranchers are facing. One of my favorite live streams this year was when we had Jared on to
Right.
discuss how to mitigate your ranch for fire. Because, as he said, wildfires are a very natural and healthy thing that occur. But a lot of times, landowners just don't know how to mitigate for that risk, and how to prepare for it. So it was neat to hear his perspective on some of that, as not only a ranch broker, a ranch owner, but also as a firefighter.
Yeah, fire's not going to go away. I mean, and in fact, perhaps some people believe that our reducing fire, back in Smokey the Bear days of reducing forest fires, has only led to a bigger problem, in
Right.
that we didn't allow nature to take its course, and preventing that has now led to some major issues, and you get some big blowouts. And
Mhm.
I think it's really related a bit to the water issue. It's not going to go away. People are going to still invest in ranches, and so what can they do to help protect themselves and
Mhm.
understand where they're at? Insurance is impacting, certainly understanding insurance. As we get listings now, we're really, as part of it, hey, what's the opportunity to reinsure here as we go through the process?
Mhm.
And just understanding what that is and passing that down. So I think we will have some experts also in the coming year address those things, um, because look, I mean, we're still one of the few countries that have opportunity to buy land,
Right.
and so it's a good investment and a sound investment. So just understand and be aware of those issues as you protect that investment going
Mhm.
forward. And to the same extent we talked about, you can love land to death, and
Right.
and recreation has certainly played a role in impacting wildlife and wild mitigation corridors and those type of things. So just understand as a landowner, there are times in migration periods and other things that maybe you shouldn't be taking out the
Four
you
wheeler.
know, motorized motorcycle through elk calving area or whatever that might be, because the studies are showing that's impacting it, and certainly as we see more and more people move out west and move into some of these hinterlands, you just got to be aware of it.
Mhm.
And you and I know we're even working on projects right now in Chile, outside of the United States, where we're working with Explora and moving forward, where the landowners are actually putting money into an endowment managed by Nature Conservancy to take care of that landscape.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's a great idea. I feel like I wish we could somehow institute some things similar as we work on some of the properties we work
Well, and it's interesting too. I mean, there's even been cases with public land access for fishing
on. Hmm.
through private land. That's a regional challenge that we'll continue to see.
Okay.
There's some, even when I was in Utah, there's some of that, the degradation of the four wheelers and the motorized kind of vehicles in Moab. Like I've never seen anything like it. And as a
Hmm.
landowner, you have a responsibility to the land itself, and you can protect a lot of the land that maybe these wildlands and these public lands can't. So, kind of figuring out those tools at your disposal, like you were saying, the migratory corridors, knowing what you can do to protect those corridors with the public land access for fishermen, protecting the rivers above the public
Hmm.
land. So maybe it won't even be an issue in the future. These are things we'll continue to look at, and we will share these stories as we hear them through the news. And
Yeah, well, we even listened to Mike Mead, ex-governor of Wyoming, last night. And he was always one of those guys, to listen and say, okay, we need to talk through these issues. And
mhm,
that public private, that there's a real, it's resurfaced, and it resurfaces all the time. Again, educate the landowners on, you know
right.
being a good neighbor,
Mhm,
and educating the public at the same time, being
right.
a good neighbor, and understand there are private property rights as well. And
Yeah.
it's all part of the, plan. I think, I think we probably should be finalizing this book about being a good neighbor in the, in the 2020s and
Yeah.
beyond.
Mr. Rogers of rural America.
Yeah.
We could title it
Don't
something like that.
don't you be my neighbor. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, another thing that we focused on at length, this was one of the fifth things we focused on this year, is another tool at the disposal of landowners is regenerative agriculture.
Mhm.
Land is precious in the West, so we're always exploring how to preserve it. Hence our interest in this tool, regenerative agriculture, which is a mouthful, but it's super helpful. And this idea, it rethinks the notion of getting the most out of the land in the short term at the long term expense of soil health. So
Right.
we had Kevin Watt, who used to work for Tomcat, who's now up at High Lonesome. We talked to Line Timbers, Tom Morrow, and Lewis Martin with Woody Beardsley about some of the things they're doing at the BX Ranch. It's really neat. You said it a little last night when we were at the Citizen of the West, and we were talking to some landowners. Like we love what we do, but we were with some of the candidates for the National Western Scholarship Trust, and they're all
Mhm.
going to school for their PhDs in soil health and
Right.
all these different things. So it's cool to have these experts on because I learned a lot. I mean, there's a lot of things out there that people are learning about the soil, about how to graze cattle in a way that protects the soil, but also, creates income and more grass and better water and all these things. So it was really cool to have all these people on this year.
Yeah, you're putting to bed some old mythology about it. You're getting a new science on soils. Like you said, even on Tomcat, I remember being out that on that ranch in California and having these soil specialists, showing me a handful of soil and just all the microbes, that's in the little handful. Your mind just, and how that affects anything from grasses to everything, and just the nature of good soil, and it's a
Mhm.
foundation to what we have in the U.S. So that science is really, and it's so heartwarming to see people and young, kids, adults doing this and committing their lives to that,
Mhm.
to all of that, and because we are a nation of we provide food and fiber, and so
Yeah.
it's so cool. I mean, I look in awe of some of these people. It's like I'm not a good artist. I can draw, barely get a stick figure. I'm not a great hunter necessarily or fisherman, and I'm not necessarily well educated. So, but I
But
really do.
you
I
know
do
Russian
care.
studies, Dad, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you got that
Uh,
on lock.
all right,
No,
but I really do. This is what drives me, and I
yeah.
tell people. I just think, got one planet here. Let's take care of what we have, invest in it, know how best to take care of it and run it. Because really, owning a ranch is you're owning time. You're
Mhm.
owning a space and time on that particular property. So what you do matters to the next person down the line.
And for those who are seeing this as an investment, it's a way to sustain and increase your income. Because if you just let a land sit there, or you overgraze it, or you
Hmm.
don't implement some of these practices, you're not going to continue to see the ranch that you purchased. You gotta continue to be innovative and to continue to use the tools at your disposal. And if you do own a land and you're kind of starting to see some of this degradation happen, reaching out to even us, and we can connect you with a lot of great ranch managers and soil scientists that can help you create a plan, because it's never too late.
No, you're right, and it's well stated there because even if you're not running cows and you're leasing out your operation, even very important then to you don't know that next person necessarily is well vetted on some of these newer ideas, and nobody's there to cause harm. I'm not saying lessees. I mean, but not everybody's always up to date on what really it works
Mhm.
and in your particular area. Because we run the gamut of working on high elevation altitude, ranches, with irrigated meadows and firs and aspens to high desert areas, and then you've got the plains. So
Mhm.
you're working on all these, and there's different rules and ways of doing it. So even if you're leasing it out and you're there just to enjoy the sunrises and sunsets and the investment, you better have a plan, and we can help you with that plan.
Yeah. And that's a great segue into our sixth topic that we really focused on. Is another way to plan out is an innovative way to win. So maybe you don't want to necessarily use agriculture, like we were discussing previously, as your main source of income, but you're looking for some type of avenue to improve, the investment that you put in, and making sure it is a sound investment. What's really
Mhm.
neat about the industry today and the market space is there are a lot of innovative things happening that will improve your overall investment, that will bring income. And it was really great to have Eric O'Keefe on earlier this year, the editor of the Land Report, because he has been on a lot of these properties that are having some of these new operations that happen, entrepreneurial monetization strategies of the
Right.
leading landowners. One of the things we were looking at was, this kind of experimental exploration, hospitality.
Yeah, a little tourism and things of that
Mhm.
nature, right?
So we
Yeah.
looked at Ted Turner's Reserve down in southern Colorado and northern New Mexico. There's some really cool things happening down there that maybe you can't implement at that large of a scale, but you can implement in your own way on your own property.
Yeah, we're seeing, from a kind of hospitality, recreation, tourism, limited scale to upper scale. We're seeing, new businesses even putting up like private camping grounds, and those can go on parts of land that maybe you're not utilizing as well, and there's opportunities there. So there's always traditional hunting and fishing revenue and things from a recreational standpoint. We're seeing groups doing backcountry skiing,
Hmm.
So those are all kind of physical uses of it, but then you get into the ecosystem kind of conservation finance issues,
Hmm.
working with, Ben Guion, who works with us now, on some of his habitat banks that he's created to create income on protecting the prevalent jumping lines, which was just won an award this year.
And just
Um,
a quick plug, we're having him on next week's podcast. So
oh, is that right?
if you want to learn more about mitigation banks and how to create income, and if your ranch is,
Yeah,
set up for
it's
that.
amazing.
Yeah.
And again, knowing what your timeline is on creating those things, but if you have the patience and you want to go through it, it's wonderful. There's wetland mitigation, and then there's the carbon sequestration.
Hmm.
It's a wild, wild west right now out there, and be cautious right now. But we're getting the top uh, uh, experts in that will be providing some additional this year.
Hmm.
So it's really cool, and these are things that you're doing that are just benefiting the ranch,
Right. It's
and you're
it's
getting paid potentially to do so. I was like, okay, that doesn't take me long to figure that one out.
Yeah, and it's things, I mean, that's what's so exciting about being a landowner today is you don't have to depend on the agricultural production. I mean, that granted, that is one of the most important things for the viability and health of your property is to
Right.
work the land. But if, that's not the only thing you want to do, there's all these other options. Another thing that we discussed and had an article about was that virtual fencing concept
Hmm.
about, how to use technology in order to be a little bit more effective and sufficient with,
Well,
cattle ranching
you
too.
think about it,
Hmm.
fencing. You know, it's been there a long time, and even studying barbed wire and the history of barbed wire is very fascinating. But you get in these wild areas, and putting up fencing, they're all being knocked down by elk and everything else, and it becomes a real, it becomes an impediment and difficult. And how do you integrate, especially your bordering wilderness areas and your bordering national forests or public lands, and you're relying on fencing, and it can be very costly. But this is a way to help, you know, putting these collars. I had all these images of putting collars on cows, and
I did too.
yeah, right, yeah, uh, some sci-fi kind of scenario, but it's not quite that bad, and it's really, really fascinating
Hmm.
because now you can do most of this management, you know,
Virtually.
from your computer screen and
Hmm.
managing and not having that. So it's I think there's really the road ahead from that standpoint is where tech is really going to be helping
Yeah.
a very non-tech business.
And we'll have I'm excited because this year we're going to have some virtual fencing experts on. We're also
Mhm.
going to be having some, solar experts on how to, use solar to run ranches, that kind of thing. So
Yeah, we got the
there's
wind still. It's
innovation, there's
all
a lot going on. It's
right.
exciting. Um,
Mhm.
and then another thing that we focused in our top 10 blog was one of our bigger successes this year was helping DU find their mountain campus,
Right.
which was really exciting because I know you are a, a former PIO, um, Daniel Carter, former PIO, my
Yeah.
boyfriend, former PIO. So,
That's Pioneer for people who don't know. I
so,
went to
but
BU. Yeah.
yeah, but it was neat because Jared and Daniel they represented DU and they landed on a really remarkable property, the Magic Sky Ranch.
Which I don't think it
And
was really listed at the time. And so,
yeah.
those are things, it's really, as you come and look at these things, I look at the history, and I was even talking, with Mallory earlier about this. The joy is not always the dollars and the big sales. It's really helping somebody out to do something
Hmm.
great. And so for them to work with DU and do that, I wasn't as engaged with them, but that's the beauty of having great brokers who do good work.
Hmm.
They can handle that. And Jared had worked with DU before on a very difficult project in Wyoming. He was very successful in helping them out. And of course, they came back and said, "Hey, we'd like to hire you guys again to help us find this mountain campus." And Daniel jumped in, and number one, so it's collaboration that we offer within the firm, but it also is it's just cool to be able to help DU in that situation.
Mhm.
taking a property that was already kind of like a Girl Scout camp at once and just reutilize that. So we're not taking something that wasn't,
Building. Right.
yeah, yeah, you're right. We're and it's they're going to be able to do studies and continue to provide education and people to understand impacts on these areas and so that's wonderful. D has been a great impact here in Colorado, and all these universities too in Colorado do a lot. I mean, just even
They
watching
do.
last night with CSU and
Mhm.
their amazing program in ag is just really
That was
heartwarming.
special.
So, and I've worked with a lot of people who are professors there and on different boards and what they're doing as to innovation. But beyond just working with DU, again, just helping people to do certain things is just
Mhm.
really, you know,
And
and the relationships we've developed are just wonderful.
and it was a really prime example of kind of the knowledge base of both those brokers that helped with it and finding it. Because as you said previously, it was an off-market property. So, being able to find that diamond in the rough
Yeah.
and working with that buyer as long as they did, it was cool.
Well,
It
I
was a neat
remember it being
transaction.
listed like 10 years ago or 15, and it's so funny, I just wish I knew how better to take what this filing cabinet in here and and somehow put it somewhere because, you retain this for a long time. And that's the
Mhm,
beauty with working, um, you know, not to tout our own horn, but, we've been around a while and working with lots of different clients in
mhm.
lots of different areas. Um, I think, I can go on a lot about, like DUs and other transactions, but I think we'll talk a little bit too about, what it is to work with, these old friendships and things like that. I'd like
Yeah,
to
it's
finish
big.
that
That's what we
discussion at the end.
friends are important and
Yeah.
colleagues and keeping those. Well, we'll go on to then just another thing that our number 8 of our top 10 is the value proposition that we are facing in the market today.
Hmm.
As you alluded to, I will not allude to your age, but you've been in this space for 30 years plus.
Hmm.
And, we have I think it's backwards on the camera, so you're
Okay.
safe. Um,
You're right. What am I? Yeah.
but, 2022 and 2021, parts of it, we saw values that we've never seen before. I mean, we pride ourselves in how we value properties. We have incredible relationships with appraisers. But, we saw values like we've never seen, but we were also able to find buyers willing to pay those values. So it was this interesting market. And I mean, we can talk a little bit at length about that, but, we sold our top sale of the year was in Jackson Hole this year. It was,
Yeah.
200 acres for 30
35
plus
million.
million. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of our top sales, right? I mean,
Mhm.
I believe that was a top sale in Jackson at least last year. Which is saying a lot for a place like Jackson Hole. But I don't know if it was so much the values, but everything crept up. But this has been a up market since 2013, quite frankly. And most people, at least of my ilk, thought that this in 2020 was not going to be a boom. But certainly it was, and part of it was COVID, and people can work from wherever. Um, the stock market's at a certain level. All this thing fueled this return to these unique properties, and really what it continues to fuel is the lack of inventory right now.
Right.
I think we're at a historic low inventories right now. I think that will be changing here slowly. It's not going to all uh, happen right away, but I've told a lot of clients this that with that inventory loss, we're not seeing, if you look at a lot of the residential markets, some of the office markets and other things, they're down. They're down
Mhm.
in a lot, and some of it's interest rate driven. And certainly with the ultra high net worth investors, they're just kind of, generally speaking, immune from those particular issues. And then again, still, but we are really at historic low inventory levels for what I consider kind of Class A, good property, well situated, especially some of these mountainous type properties that may have water
Right.
rights near national forests, near resort markets, and things like that. Those things are really doing still well. And I mean, look at the stuff we just did in Route County, and we've got 3 properties under contract in less than a couple months,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
and
say.
of relisting these properties. Looked at a property yesterday in another market for a client, just listed. We're doing due diligence and found out it was under contract already. So these are things that we're being faced with, and it's more important than ever to really get down to understand. You can't jump at everything right away. Be patient still in some of these decisions, but if you really want something, you better, and this is where we can help, at least accelerate, that educational opportunity
Right.
to understand what's going on. But I've been interviewed by, lots of different appraisers, and what we're seeing from our trends. But we do believe that even, we're not seeing as many deal flow. That partly to do with the lack of inventory. But, I think, there's going to be a little bit of a slowdown. I'm hoping a return to normalcy, that will impact the brokerage community, especially those who really, you know, added 200 people all of a sudden. They're going
Right.
to be looking for a job because there's no inventory to sell.
Right.
So, but we're positioned well from that, because we'll still do we have, um, you know, a vital kind of assistance to clients in helping on public land issues to ranch management, and we're developing more of our service end in that regard.
Yeah. No, I mean, if especially it's a really good market for a buyer too. So just and that's where, because the low inventory, not to, again, tout our own horn, but low inventory, not necessarily knowing when things are coming available, knowing what's out there, having a broker to help you kind of
Mhm.
navigate that and be readily available to jump on things as they do come available, I think is huge. And we'll
Yeah,
see
and
more.
having a broker having the diversity of knowing, you know, a property here, you know, say it's up in Steamboat, but also knowing Telluride, and also knowing Durango, and also knowing, Jackson or Wheatland, or, so you having those people with the knowledge, you know,
Yeah, it's
that,
huge.
yeah.
So we'll see more of that in 2023, I am
Mhm.
sure.
Mhm.
Another thing that we focused on in 2022 is one of, I think, your favorite topics, coming from Gary, Indiana
Mhm.
area, and falling in love with the West and moving out here and starting your lives here, is
Mhm.
the Western ethos.
Sure.
Not only is Western land different than the rest of the country, so is the culture. So we had one of our favorite people on, Ed Roberson, to discuss. He has his own podcast, Mountain and Prairie, and I know you guys talked at length about some of the books that inspired you, some of the
Mhm.
the movies that inspired you to come out here. But it was interesting to have him on, and then we had Rose Frederick, the curator of Coors Western, on. We also
Talked to
came,
her last night,
yep, which was
and she
great.
introduced me to Don Cohen, an artist, who I just love. Uh, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's this untangible land is tangible,
Mhm.
it's this thing that is out there that you can see, that you can, feel the soil in your hands. I always say, my friends, they talk about meta and, the Bitcoin and the metaverse and all these things. I'm like, land is the only thing where you can still hold it, and you need to hold it or else it's not a thing.
Right, right. I hear you.
But what I'm kind of going with is the ethos is not something tangible. It's a feeling. It's
Mhm.
when we were in the room last night with the Citizen of the West and being surrounded by these people that care about this place so much.
Mhm.
Like, I just got chills just thinking about it. It's different than other parts of the country, of the world.
Yeah.
So to dive into some of those, I mean, we talked about the cowboy poetry. The Coors Western art exhibit and sale. There's all these really interesting ways of educating yourself about the West through different mediums. So that was kind of fun to finally, like, itch that thing that we've been talking about for so long?
Well, I think there's still this abiding nature of why people do it. There is this mystery allure about the West and Go West, Young Man, and all those ideas, and the homesteads, homesteading acts, and you know, and you know, to the Native American uh, plights and issues, and that you grow up with, and you realize that it's a little different than what you thought when you grow
Hmm.
up and see some of those things. But the national parks and the public lands, and just the escape. Um, coming from where I came from and saying, "Wow, Colorado! I could live there," and and
Right.
uh, and I had no idea. But and it also relates to land ownership and those kind of functions. But the culture is really still a drive for me, and well, I got a lot of windshield time, and when I could see somebody reflect what I see, and it creates that emotional connection. It's a pretty cool aspect of it. We collect the Native American art to all kinds of things. And so I think it's people too that there's more and more writing about it, and I think we're inspired by different ways and how we connect to that. But that's okay. I mean,
Right.
that's good. That maybe creates that caring nature too that goes with the investment aspect of
Hmm. And as you said, I know we've said it before, but land is kind of art. We're art dealers, and we are connecting our clients with not only land and investment, but a feeling too. So that's
it.
kind
I
of
mean,
that.
yeah, I love being all the national Western deals because it really brings in people from all over. You
Hmm.
bring in different artists with the Coors Western Art Show. My problem is I tend to buy something every year. And then, like you said last night, you've got Republican and Democrat governors who work in Wyoming who are just good friends. And
Hmm.
you also get lessons learned on how to work together and
Hmm.
how to stay friends. And so, yeah, it's cool. And just watching, there's so much appreciation for the land. And like I said, you don't have to be the cowboy because I ain't. I've learned how to ride horses, which I've done, and joined the Rangers.
Yes.
I've done different things. My friends have taught me how to be a better hunter, be a better skier. But it was part of the ethos that brought me here that connects me to it still.
Yep. And it's so I think next, even this year in 2023, we'll continue to have artists on. We'll continue to have these other types of thought leaders in kind of that space too, which I'll be excited about. And I know you'll
Yeah,
be
I
on
think so.
as a as a guest as well, so you can add
I
your own
appreciate it.
those.
How to build your art collection to the books that are fun reading,
Mhm.
to events that you can attend that you won't see anywhere else. I mean,
Yeah.
even go to rodeos and interesting, they're going to brandings, and then more people need to go to brandings, for instance,
Yeah.
which is a really awesome experience.
We were talking to a landowner yesterday, and he was saying he was surprised that everyone keeps talking about Yellowstone, but
Mhm.
he was saying that they actually did a good job of representing what a branding actually is, you
Right.
know.
Except for the
But
music in the background and stuff
you're
like
right.
that.
He said, but
I
when
haven't
we
been
do
one.
brandings, there's no music.
I tell a story of my first branding, which occurred, in my 30s, probably or 40s, maybe. And I was a wrangler, I don't, and they put me out there, and I'm using all the wrong techniques and things like that. The third cow, I'm like, gosh, how many more do you got to do? And they said 150, and my arms are all like going, oh my god, can
I
you give
think
me
you were
whatever you're giving those cows as an injection? Uh,
yeah,
but I had to learn that. Eating the dust and all that. It was great. It's great.
it's good. It's the West. You gotta get dirty before you can have
Yeah,
fun.
absolutely.
Perfect. And then just kind of our last topic that we discussed, our top 10 is,
Hmm.
the relationships and the friends and the connections we've made at MRG. We're blessed here at Murray Ranch Group to have befriended so many incredible people over the years. And in turn, through this podcast and other mediums, we've been able to share their insights with everyone here on the live stream today and
Yeah.
listening on the podcast.
Mhm.
In the past year, for example, we've connected with conservationist and podcaster Ed Robertson, who used to actually work with us. And
Right.
he is the host of the Mountain and Prairie podcast, which
It's awesome.
it's
It's awesome.
amazing.
It's so cool what he's
I
doing.
try to do him proud with how I host this, but he is the king of the podcast.
Yeah.
So we were so grateful to have him on. To Western Landowners Alliance Executive Director Leslie Allison, who does an incredible job for
So
WLA.
committed. So
Um,
committed. So smart in that area. You can learn a lot from her.
Yep. To Harriet Lemaire, who
Yeah.
is one of our greatest and dearest friends, who's working on, conservation and, preservation on an urban level, through community activism and all of that.
Yeah, the Highline Canal is, one of the top trails, I think, a landmark thing in the United States, really.
Mhm.
So it's fun to share that because we're all working in kind of different areas and we can share these kind of things that we've experienced and learned. And so it's fun working with them, and getting back to some of the things that, working on certain transactions.
Mhm.
Last night, for instance, we had the joy to see Bob and Maggie Taylor of the Lone Tree Ranch.
Mhm.
He's become, a great friend, and I knew him through the process. And we looked at a lot of different ranches. We were laughing. He now owns a place in West Wyoming, and Maggie are talking. And I remember we were in southeast Colorado during the migration of tarantulas.
Oh,
And we're
yes. I
going down
remember
the
you telling me
highway. And we saw all these spots on the road. Like, what the hell's that? And we get out, and there's like tarantulas. Like my worst nightmare.
that. Yep. I'll
And,
never be in that car.
and you couldn't even drive. You couldn't drive through the highway without killing them. I mean, there were hundreds, thousands, and that was just like, and what we've developed in that relationship to Dudley, there's so many people that you get to work with. That's
Oh,
just
yeah.
these
It's
are
very
these
special.
this is the great win, and even down to the people,
Right.
old school ranchers. I remember Winona, woman up in Wyoming, and helping her out. We had a C corp issue to deal with. We had all these things. When we got through it, we became just really good friends. And I don't know. I look back at all those things, and I said
Mhm.
that's helping people through these issues and helping get their dream and matching stewards with land. And maybe I use stewardship too much. Julie always, he harps on me, gotta find a new word, I guess.
But it's true. That's why we do what we do. I mean, we do what we do because we love the land, like all of the things that we talked before this topic, about protecting the land and stewarding the land. But we also do it because of the people that we're connecting to the land. So it was neat this year to reconnect with some of those people and hear their thoughts. And I'm excited for 2023 because we'll have even more guests on to impart their knowledge. And I know I've learned a lot. So
Yeah,
I'm
more
excited.
field trips,
More
more
field
field trips in 2023.
Yes, that's the New Year's resolution. And the field
It
trip
is.
for those of you who are on is when I actually get to leave the office and go see a ranch. It's
Like
the
when you're
best
in
part
grade
of the job.
school, you got
Yes,
to take field trips. Well, we get to take field trips.
we get to
I
do that
love it.
too.
I love
So
it.
it'll be good. But as always, I appreciate you being on here, Ken, and imparting your knowledge. And I'm excited to learn more in 2023 with you.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks for joining.
Bye.
And closing out, thank you again for a great year of stories and lessons in ranch ownership. As we look ahead, Mer Ranch Group will continue to be a guide and guiding you on latest news and best practices in the West and be the thought leaders in this industry to help you invest in your future ranch and your dream property. But before we go into those stories and those next live streams and podcasts, if you want to learn more about ranch real estate, please be sure to subscribe to our newsletter on our website at www.merranchgroup.com or just give us a call, 303-623-4545. Thanks so much. See you next time.